A very good afternoon to all our guests today. Thanks again for taking time out for a discussion today on a very critical subject. The recent news that we'll be reading that the United States have been snooping on the citizens, and it's not been very well received by enterprises or by citizens alike. So security definitely is a very concurrent topic, and I'm quite excited to welcome among us Pranav. Pranav comes from Kaspersky. He's got 14 years of experience, more than 14 years of experience in providing support to enterprises. And he will be touching upon issues that really are very critical for our IT decision makers and how they can actually make sure that they are able to deliver endpoint security to their organizations. I hand over the controls to Pranav. Pranav, can you hear me?
Yeah. Thanks, Siddhant. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Pranav, and I thank you all for taking your time out to join this quite interesting topic about endpoint control and endpoint security. To start with the layout of our presentation today, we'll be taking an introduction, then understand today's environment, then bring you what Kaspersky has to offer as a solution, and finally summarize the presentation. A brief about myself, as Siddhant just mentioned, I thought of giving a face to the voice. In webinars, it's a little bit sometimes difficult, so take a pick of mine, and with Kaspersky heading the technical support division, and want to touch base about what is today's environment all about in terms of IT, where are we today, and this is quite an interesting thing to note, that the business has been growing and the business demand has been growing as well. Today, the business wants a lot more agility, efficiency, and productivity. These all parameters definitely are putting some or the other kind of pressure on the IT systems or infrastructure. So as you can see, around 66% of business owners identify business agility as a priority. 54% of the organization says that the business should be improved. These all definitely address demand a lot more from the IT. And what happens? The impact on IT is we have a lot more complex environment where we have a lot of data around, so many disparate systems, technologies what we have been built over the period of time, and that adds to the pressures on the resources, budgets. So that is the today's scenario. I'm sure this would be the scenario with a lot of organizations today, maybe including yourselves, those who are attending today, or maybe next door. This is quite a common behavior. At the same time, if the business dynamics are quite changed, as well as the threat dynamics have changed, and what we see over here, we identify at Kaspersky 200K threats every day. Now, a couple of years back, the threats what we've been hearing about were a couple of malwares released every couple of days, or maybe weeks or months. Now the scenario has changed in such a way that 2 lakh threats every day, so that is a humongous amount of number. Every second we got hundreds of threats, some or the other way across the world detected. There is another interesting area to note based upon our research done. Around 75% of the exploits are there on very popularly installed softwares like browsers, PDFs, and Javas. The reason is pretty simple. These browsers, PDFs, and Javas are deployed virtually across all machines, and They are often installed and forgotten to patch it, update it, which leaves a vulnerability either when the software was written or maybe during the course of its deployment, it leaves a vulnerability. So the malware writers today wants to target these exploits so that even the impact would be very large, because the machines are virtually installed with all of these kind of softwares. In this world of hypermobility, the employees would like to keep themselves mobile. So as a survey conducted, around 62% of the corporate mobile employees are already mobile, either through way of laptop, either through way of mobile devices. Another interesting part is around 5 to 10% of the laptops would be either lost or stolen within their useful lifespan. So in India, typically a useful lifespan of a laptop is 3 to 5 years max to max, and it carries a lot more confidential data on it. So what we are looking at virtually is there is a lot of data around on those devices which are either lost or stolen. So the data is just not contained within the data center. And yes, with the advent of mobile phones having processing powers, they are easily used for corporate communications. You could have all your smartphones loaded with your corporate applications, and a lot of people start using these phones even without regards to the IT security policy. That's quite an alarming situation. So that is one of the threat area, and we see another important aspect about patching. We often hear patching. Patching is simply like finding a hole. Let me again rerun this slide for you. It's about some software codes were written and we are trying to find a hole within it and then patch it up. Patch it up with a software file or maybe with using a configuration. And these are quite essentially required, a mundane day-to-day operations required to patch up the software installed in your environment. They have to be first tested up. Inventory of all the softwares has to be gathered. And it's a continuous process. But in reality, people often install either the software barebone or install only one patch and then forget it. That still leaves a big security loophole in our environment. So let us understand the typical PC life cycle. The first, the machine is commissioned, or maybe even the machine is purchased, given it to the vendor for the necessary operating systems and the softwares to be loaded on it, and then finally given as an approval to the user to start working. This is the typical. But what happens within an IT department, there are a couple of tasks to be done, like OS installation, the distributions of the necessary softwares as per the user's department credentials, or sometimes special softwares as per approvals. Then there would be patching and there would be necessary controls of what this machine could access over the network. This is a life cycle, and if we start understanding, depicting this life cycle, there would be a couple of problems depicted within this life cycle. There are managerial areas where there are routine tasks which has to be done every day. Whenever a new machine is commissioned, every day those tasks has to be done. There is a network area. The engineer has to plug in the network, put in the IP addresses, then identify the softwares, load it with those softwares, then load it with the patches. It's quite a complicated, mundane, day-to-day task. That's on the management side. Another problem what we see is on the security side. These softwares, sometimes good and sometimes bad. Bad in the sense they can also come along with malware. If those softwares are not approved softwares or sometimes downloaded over the internet, it could contain malware. You could also have an environment where an approved software is not installed or a designated patch is not installed, and by virtue of that, the system is quite vulnerable. It is often noted that the patch installation is postponed. Let me give you a scenario. We have seen users in live environment when there is a prompt or a pop-up coming up to install a patch, the users often snooze it or postpone it, and finally postpone it to an extent where the vulnerability or the exploit has already done its job and the system is now infected or maybe in the controls of some hackers. Anything could happen. So how much are we postponing is a very big concern. So I have here tried to highlight the life cycle and the problems within our IT systems. This is an area where I would like to talk about how Kaspersky can help. Help to ease out those pains in the mundane task of maintenance of PCs and securing them in an approved manner. Kaspersky has a couple of modules within this entire solution what we are going to present today. And I'm sure in our environments we would be either using some or the other mechanism to either overcome that problem or maybe sometimes ignore the problem in the first place, which is not a very good sign again. We are trying to address over here two key aspects of the problems in my earlier slide, the management problem and the security problem. Using the Kaspersky solution, we are trying to automate a lot of tasks, including the OS deployment and the OS update. Hence, if your OSs and the patches all are up to date, you would be in a much more secured position. We are also trying to give you a solution which would automate your software distributions and also take steps to do a remote troubleshooting. The problem in a lot of areas is approach towards the machine. The machine would be lying on 3rd floor and the help desk is on the 5th floor. Sometimes it becomes difficult for the engineer to get assigned to go to the designated floor to solve that problem. That may be because of time or availability or because of any other network issues as well. Here we are trying to address that simple problem of troubleshooting it remotely. We would understand how the solution would help organizations keep an inventory of all those softwares and hardwares in their infrastructure and also keep a tab of the illegal or unapproved software or hardware usage. A very important area is vulnerability detection. This solution would help you to understand the vulnerabilities lying on your endpoints. Those vulnerabilities could be patched using a specific patch by a specific vendor. That information is also very critical to be having handy so that the necessary action could be taken. And if the patches are put timely, you are in a more secured manner. In a dynamic environment, we often see that there are new devices added to the network and removed on the fly. It is very important for the company as well as the IT department to know what are those devices currently running on our network. So the discovery of all those devices is also very important. The solution what I'm going to present today is known as Kaspersky Systems Management. This is going to address quite a lot of these areas which we face problems in our day-to-day PC operations or the endpoint as we call it today. I would try to run down through each of those modules which are available within this systems management solution. We would start from the OS deployment. OS deployment is quite a time-consuming activity. Whenever there is a new machine or a formatted machine to be commissioned to the network, you first start loading the Microsoft, maybe XP or 7 or 8 operating system using a CD or a media. That installation might take a couple of hours, and then you start uploading the patches. Over here, we are trying to automate that process by creating an image of a ready reckoner system. Once I create an image of the system, as or maybe as known as the master image, I could easily replicate or clone it to my other nodes whenever required to be commissioned. That ease up my task, solves a lot of time-consuming problem, and also gives me a common operating environment, because the reference image would be ready with all the necessary softwares as well as the patches, and that reference image itself is being cloned on other machines. We could also do a bare metal installation using a PXE server method. A new machine, when it is commissioned without an operating system, it would try to search for a PXE server. The Kaspersky server is pre-configured with PXE, and it gives the image back to the barebone server. So within just couple of clicks, you would see the barebone machine loaded with your approved image of operating system. We also support wake on LAN and deferred deployments. Another critical area is about software distribution. Once a machine has been commissioned on the network, there would be instances where the user would be demanding certain softwares to be loaded over the air or over the network. This is an area where Kaspersky solution comes into picture about distributing the softwares. You could distribute the software in a manual, an automated, or a scheduled method, and the solution could help you to deploy any standard MSI packages. Right from the central server, you could push those MSI packages to your endpoints, and the endpoints would be loaded with those softwares within just a couple of minutes. You could also use the same solution to push up specific EXEs or batch files or commands. So this is a completely software distribution module given within this solution. Kaspersky also identifies a lot of applications within its databases, and the database is categorized further into trusted or untrusted categories. You could also use this database to find regular updates for those software which are deployed using automatic method. So that ease up the distribution as well as the further maintenance of those softwares in your endpoints. I've tried to use a snapshot of our management server where you could see the installation packages. We have the option to create various images of operating systems as well as packages of various softwares, and those are all stored within the central repository. At any given point of time, a user demands a particular software. Right from the click of here, you could push the software remotely on that machine. This technology is further embedded with a technology of update agent. The update agent is used to minimize the bandwidth consumption on your network. In a case where a user has to be loaded with softwares and the user is in a remote office, then the update agent would be the local repository server for all those patches or those softwares, or even maybe operating system images. So using a multicast technology from my master management server, I would push the package to the update agent at my branch. The update agent further sends it to the local machines. This way I reduce the bandwidth consumption and also keep a track of all the softwares running. As you can see over here, from the management server or the HQ server, I push back to the update agent, and the update agent further distributes. Using a multicast technology between the HQ server and the update agent, I reduce entire bandwidth consumption. Generally, there are softwares which are quite big in nature as well, and this is one of the methods to achieve reduce in the bandwidth. You could also use the same technology over here to take a remote off the machine just in case you need to do any troubleshooting, and using the connection tunneling method, it is a secured method to connect back to from the management server to to the endpoint for any troubleshooting or any analysis purpose. Without even leaving the seat, the administrator could do it centrally from one place itself. The third very important area is about knowing what is actually running in your environment. What kind of hardwares are running in your environment, like CPU, RAM, or hard disk, or optical drives? What kind of softwares which are running in our environment? Often it is noticed at a very initial stage of a customer that they start maintenance of these inventories within an Excel sheet. But as and over a period of time, the number of machines or the number of configurations increases, a simple spreadsheet would not be helpful. Here, automation is the only key to solve these kind of problems. So our solution in the systems management gives you a complete software inventory. It gives you what all softwares are installed on all your network. It collects back this information and sends it to the master server. From the master server, the administrator could create reports of which machine is running which kind of softwares and take a call whether it was approved software or it was a malicious software. You could also look at another scenario wherein there are softwares which are running in a specific department which we are not approved. So you might create reports based on groups of machines and then vis-a-vis compare with the approved lists of softwares. Necessary action could also be taken if you want to block certain softwares or applications running in the specific group. Here I take a snapshot of again the management server. It shows the application registry. There are n number of softwares which are running in this environment. The list, if I could start reading, like right from WinRAR to Windows Driver Package to maybe a Team Viewer to Mozilla Maintenance Services, Visual Basic, C++. And again, there are various variants again of the same software. You might have an IE8, you might have an IE9, or you might have an IE10. Certain applications would only run if they are IE9. So if that is the case in your environment, you could run down a report which is detailed in nature to let you know the exact version of the software running on those endpoints. Because of any compatibility reason or any security reason, if IE10 is not approved in your organization, you could check from here which machine is actually running IE9 or IE10 and take again the necessary action. This is a report. It shows which softwares are installed in how many number of computers within how many groups. So you might create reports based on users, based on application names, or based on computer names or groups. Right from a central place itself, you come to know the entire software inventory across all your endpoints. Same goes the case with hardware. Our machines have been commissioned over a period of time within a network. Some machines could have been purchased 2 years back. Some machines are just recently purchased. And to keep a note of all the configurations of the purchases made, what RAM, what CPU, hard disk, all those things, this module gives you an inside out of all the hardware inventory. You could also create notification tabs. If a particular machine earlier loaded with a 500 GB of hard drive, you could take a report of it, and over a period of time, if you see that there is a mismatch in that number for a particular machine, that might raise an alarm. Either the drive was decommissioned or it was upgraded based on a specific user request. So you could go back to your purchases and check whether a hardware requisition was made for this machine, because as of today, there is a mismatch. And a real-time notification by email or an SMS can also be configured if there is any change in a specific machine. Here we have a list of machines like machine name, security center, PC. You could even do it for mobiles. We recently have launched our solution for mobile device management, MDM. So if you've been running our solution, you could also find out the inventory for a mobile phone in the same tab. And here we find out what kind of CPUs are there in your network, what kind of memories are there, what kind of motherboards are there, network cards. Entire detail of your endpoints would be noted over here. So now no need to maintain spreadsheets for your softwares or hardwares, vis-a-vis which user is having which kind of softwares, he's been given which machine with what configuration. You all have that centrally ready with you at any given point of time. Because of any audit issues you need to create a report, it is there with you available. Another important part specifically about softwares, the softwares are procured, installed on the user's machine, and after a period of time of the software, maybe 1 year or 2 years, typical renewal might come in. It is very important to note that these softwares, if they are renewed, has to be first checked whether they were used in the right manner in your environment or not. Let's take an example. If a particular software for 10 licenses you have procured, at every year it is very important before renewing that whether 10 users are using it or not. If only 8 users are using it, then you might cut down the renewal to 8 and not pay for 10. That is very important. You might also want to note if a particular software which is approved is installed on a machine where it is not approved. That way you could track that the user is not allowed to use a specific software, but by way of your inventories you have found out that the software is running on that machine. These kind of concerns and queries are the license controls. With this module, we bring you a license control and the license visibility tab to see how optimized your softwares are being running in your environment. Are they overrunning? Maybe because then in that case you are violating some compliances, or are they underrunning the numbers? In that case, during the renewal time, you could reduce the numbers to save on the unnecessary cost going out. Over here, I'm trying to create in this snapshot a VMware software inventory, and you come to know based on a group of softwares, if I run a report, I come to know that this software is running on how many machines. Vis-a-vis, I can also put over here a number that this software is approved to be running only on 10 machines. So if it overshoots, you get a report out there. You get a report over here. In the second snapshot, I try to showcase Adobe Acrobat licenses which are deployed. I create a group of softwares in a group and then run this report. Since we already know the entire hardware and software inventory, it becomes a logical move for us to create this kind of report and controls, which could even notify if there is an excess or a violation of usage. Another part about talking still further about softwares which are written, installed, and then we have to continuously patch them. Patch is the keyword over here. Keep them patching, keep them patching. But before patching, it is very important to know what vulnerabilities are carried on that software and the piece of software which is installed in your environment. One method to see vulnerabilities in a large endpoint network is some people start doing random sampling. Out of, let's say, 1,000 machines which are there in their environment, on the desktop specifically, some people do random sampling, do a vulnerability assessment on only every 5 to 10 machines. But that necessarily does not give you an entire clear picture. While we are doing vulnerability assessment for our critical infrastructures like servers, it is important to do vulnerability assessment for our desktop environment as well, because they are the compute environment which are loaded actually with many commercial softwares, and also sometimes softwares which are downloaded over the internet, and if they do not have control, they could create a security hazard in the environment. So over here, we create a vulnerability detection task. The information about the vulnerability or the vulnerability database, we get it from Secunia, one of the largest company in the security analysis and research. So we take the Secunia update. We also take updates from the Windows Update Services. And the third database for us is the Kaspersky's own vulnerability detection. These all updates are being catered, and then we conduct a vulnerability scan on your endpoints, which gives you information of all the missing patches or configuration mismatch in your environment. This could be done for all your endpoints, not in a sampling manner. It should be done on all machines, and the software gives you the ability to do it on all machines. You could do based on the vulnerability or the severity of the vulnerability, then you could take action of patching up. If a vulnerability is really critical and serious enough to disturb your environment, then that particular patch has to be deployed first rather than taking care of optional patches, which are time consuming and which does not really address your controls or your security. So prioritization is very important. So when we detect the vulnerabilities, the snapshot as shown over here will give you the details of those vulnerabilities. Either they are high category or they are low category or severe or warning. And the detailed information about that vulnerability, including the vendor, where the patch is available, how to configure and how to download, entire information is available when you click that vulnerability. Based on the vulnerability information, you start the next journey of patching. Over here, we use a centralized patching approach. We could deploy Microsoft patches as well as patches for other softwares like Adobe's, Java's, which are popularly installed on all the machines, virtually all the machines. So using a central management system, we deploy the necessary patches on those machines as per the prioritization schedule, either for a patch or maybe as per the time. You could set up the patch deployment at off-peak hours or maybe evening or late nights when the users are not there. And next day get a report how many of them are really patched, and then keep on doing that exercise without leaving your seat. The administrator can conduct this entire patch management sitting at one place itself. We also support one more important area is the testing mode. The testing mode is very important if a critical fix has been launched by the respective vendor, or let's say Microsoft launches a patch. In larger environments, they test it out on a couple of machines, wait for it to show that no adverse effects are there on that machine after installing that patch, and then maybe continue on other machines. So we also support that kind of environment where you could select those test machines and then continue, once it is okay, continue with the other machines rolling out the patches. As you can see over here, you can have the patches and which are fixing specific vulnerabilities. Each and every patch is meant to fix a particular vulnerability. A vulnerability might have multiple patches. Every patch is meant to solve at least one vulnerability. That is how the jigsaw puzzle happens. So we give you both the insights of the vulnerability as well as the respective patch. To create a task of deploying patches, select your group of machines and just push it from the central management server itself. These patches are pushed across those endpoints and you get a report back of any still missing vulnerabilities on those machines by regularly conducting vulnerability assessment and then patching up. It's a continuous life cycle which the management center can help you do it automatic. While we are doing patching, which are sometimes bigger in size, we again introduce you the update agent concept for traffic optimization on your network. Using again the multicast technology in our update agent, the management center sends out the update in a multicast single stream, which is then further distributed by the update agent to the necessary endpoints. That way, you reduce the bandwidth load. And you get a vulnerability report of how many vulnerabilities are there, on which machines, dated on which, and how many machines or the computers which are affected by a particular vulnerability. There might be instances in your environment that a particular machine is unpatched deliberately because of a certain reason, maybe due to any of the testing done for any software. You could exclude those kind of machines if you do not really want to patch it. but you still want to do a vulnerability assessment, it is up to the administrator to create a policy to conduct vulnerability assessment on a regular basis. And the final task, as we spoke about, the PC lifecycle is access control. Once your necessary softwares are installed, your patching is done, the machine has to access some of the other resources on your network. So based upon department, based upon user credentials, generally the access over the infrastructure is given. Here we try to understand the network access. Today we got various kinds of devices which are coming in our office network. Sometimes an employee bringing his home laptop, connecting it to the office environment. Sometimes a user from a different branch office connecting back to the HO network. There are scenarios which are different, and again, anyways, we have the bring your own device concept which is prevalent in the PC environment still. You would have sometimes partners or guests coming up and logging up to your network and asking for credentials to join and access your critical infrastructures. There might be scenarios that unpatched machines or machines which are compromised by any malware are trying to access your corporate resources. Those are the various situations wherein the network is being used to connect to infrastructure services. PCs which could be a home laptop, which could be an office laptop but not patched up, maybe an infected machine, all these scenarios are there. Our solution would help you to address all of them. If you do not have a necessary software, then it would try to block it. It also gives you the ability to create guest access policies. The module keeps on discovering newer devices which are added to your network and give an alert to the administrator that there is a particular new device added to a particular branch. If you have priorly come to know that a guest machine is trying to access, you could create a block policy or redirect to a captive portal where once he puts the credential of guest access, only selective access is given, maybe only internet is given, or maybe only patch server access is given. You could give a selective access to that guest machine. This addresses the entire PC lifecycle right from the commissioning of the machine to the access credentials of that machine. We create over here a group of all credentials for your guest machines and then forward it to a captive portal. I could create accounts for all my guests so that whenever that particular guest comes in, he could log in using only guest credentials and not being able to access our corporate resources. So to summarize the entire systems management module, let us start from the system provisioning, the first stage when the PC was just purchased. We can centralize the deployment of the operating system by creating images of a ready or a reference machine and then keep cloning the same machine across multiple newly commissioned machines. We could have a track of all your licenses, all your softwares which are running in your environment once the machine is commissioned. To take a remote control of your machine, it is possible so that the IT helpdesk engineer, rather than traveling to 3 floors down, he could just take a remote control of the endpoint and try to assist the user who was having a problem without having to leave the seat. Vulnerability scanning of all the software which are running on your endpoints and also giving you detailed hardware and software inventory. Automatic patching for your Microsoft and third-party products, and also gives you option to either automate the reboot or schedule a reboot after a particular task is performed. Because often large patches requires the machine to be rebooted So you could prioritize either the reboot at every patch or schedule it at a later date. And finally, we saw the network admission control. It gives you control of which machines are having what access to your corporate resources, and also create guest policy. In a nutshell, what we are trying to achieve is about PC maintenance life cycle in a secured and a manageable way. It gives you a better visibility of your hardware software inventory, of your software running, of your vulnerabilities there. It gives you a deeper protection, and since we have a single management console, we do not have to do alt tab of every of this, and right from one management center itself, we are trying to achieve all of them, the PC lifecycle maintenance, and hence it gives you a better visibility, protection, manageability. And this solution, what we have, we call it as a one platform, one management console, and a one cost solution. So there is a lot of unification in that solution, which is there available within systems management, which is part of our other suites available, which shares the common management platform. So as I was speaking today, our systems management is tightly integrated with our MDM component. It is tightly integrated with our anti-malware component on the endpoints or security components running on our servers. Hence, we thought that one platform, one console, and the one cost, entire thing bundled up. I thank you all for patiently hearing me out based on my session today, what I wanted to conduct. And feel free to raise questions.